Hi, everyone. It's Kelly,
Hi, it's Sandra.
and we are here for our Module 1 Discussion 1 on our definition of learning, discussing how it relates to the Alexander article, talking a little bit about principles, dimensions, and their definition of learning, and then we'll wrap up with some issues that we're wrestling with as we consider the role of learning in our own problem of practice. So I'll get us started. I wrote down my definition of learning in the pre-reading journal or looking at anything. And I consider learning the process of acquiring knowledge, skills, and wisdom. Learning can be formal and intentional, as evidenced by scholarly work, such as traditional school training and instruction, research through K-20 and beyond. It is a cognitive, social, and emotional process where our brain is actively firing neurons and storing data in a specific way. So I kind of took this whole scientific approach with it. Later on, in a further part in the journal, I also addressed more informal learning where it's just happening all around us all the time. And I definitely believe that. So Sandra, I don't know if you want to talk to the just like what is learning to you, and then I'll share a principle and we can just kind of go back and forth if you want.
Yep. So I liked the pre-reflection to sort of ground myself, like, okay, what do I think learning is before everyone tells me what it should be? And I wrote, learning represents change based on the acquisition of new knowledge, new experiences, new perspectives. It results change in understanding, change in behavior, change in mindset, change in consciousness. I think learning requires will, perhaps not in the actual moment of the experience, but certainly in looking back and reflecting on what had just transpired. It requires open-mindedness to receive information that may not resonate with content or experiences you've already acquired. I wrote, new knowledge does not have to fit with old knowledge, but it should connect with it in order to make some meaning in our brains. It yields awareness, insight, and understanding. It can yield new skills, it can shape new behaviors, and it can transform one's approach to life or work or any other dimension of being. Learning not only impacts the individual directly experiencing it, but also those in their intermediate and immediate circles of influence. It impacts us individually and collectively. That was a lot. I didn't expect all that to like kind of flow, but I think it resonates a lot with the overall article by Alexander, and
I
which I
agree. I
really
agree.
appreciated.
I like
Yeah,
that.
I just liked all the different rich dimensions that he offered, right?
I like what you said about requiring will and open-mindedness. So I wrote that down because that is going to be on my post, something new that I learned. I like the will, especially like thinking about again when we that whole resistance section, and like the disadvantageous. And I think that that's one of those things where that would really come up for sure. And I loved your point about new knowledge and old knowledge and the connection, like that it should connect.
I think in Guy's art and in Guy's discourse, didn't he say something that it doesn't have to connect? But I just saw that reference somewhere else, but I didn't know that until afterwards. So I was surprised that I actually wrote that in, that somebody else talked about that. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, and so it's interesting that you bring up Guy. So the principle that I was going to talk about was first of all, principle 8 that came out of the Alexander article, which is learning is different at different points in time. So the first thing that happened to me as I started reading these articles was I was actually taken back to multiple points in my prior learning, that just things started coming up for me. So things from undergrad, which, was a long time ago for me. I was in my undergrad back in 1999. So that's like 22 years ago. And just certain keywords and certain concepts were bringing things up for me. The whole focus around social theories came up for me, and just reading about that as an overview. And in Guy's discourse, where he talked about our identities and how different they are, that's very different for me at this point in time too. You and I were friends. That I stream, but I also have like different personalities of streaming. Like I have a gamer personality, and there's a whole community of practice and things that I've learned around that. And I've separated those two. So I'm kind of going all over the place with that. But in terms of coming kind of back to what issues I'm wrestling with my problem of practice and sort of in learning here, is that I'm working with educators, and I'm working to teach educators who, the stereotype and what we even see in research is that not all educators like technology equally, particularly difficult technologies like but I'm working with virtual reality, extended reality, robotics, and coding. These things can be difficult. And so this is a learning thing. How do we teach them to learn? How do we teach them to love to learn this? Communities of practice, I think, holds a lot of promise in like building a great professional learning community. But I wrestle with looking at scale. And so looking at a program of, I can say K-12, but a kindergarten teacher and I may have talked about this before, a kindergarten teacher in Florida versus a high school teacher in California, like their community is completely different. So like looking at this problem of where I want to scale, but also knowing like I can't use one size fits all, what things can I pull out of the theories and the ideas around learning that will help me not create a one size fits all template, but take those ideas and shift what I can. I think my key with communities of practice is going to be to teach, like train the trainer and teach the areas to build up their own communities, I think is where I'm going to end up having to go. But yeah, that's my spiel on all of that.
That's yeah, when you're talking about scale, like learning at scale, I do wonder a lot more about how we leverage like this information about theories of learning for something like that. I definitely think that the communities of practice piece is that whole social participation that we were talking about earlier makes a difference. I the one thing that I want to make a point out of is the dimension 3 out of Alexander et al.'s whole map of learning. Dimension 3 focuses on the who of learning, and that really like struck me because I think when I think about my problem of practice, which again is community college students who are at danger of dropping out or not persisting in college, I think about how much I lean into the psychological aspects of learning. So I do lean into the who and their psychological aspects. I think there are inherent assumptions that I'm bringing in about purpose and motivation and inspiration and the roles of those constructs in how kids and how first-time in college students learn. I think about like ACE, which are adverse childhood experiences, and just my professional experience in the youth development field on how ACE like adverse childhood experiences impact that non-cognitive development for youth. And we make this, I think, incorrect assumption that students from certain backgrounds or from certain communities, they just don't like learning or they can't learn, but we don't unpack where that comes from. We just label them as unable to learn, or we track them inappropriately without addressing the non-cognitive development. And how might this first year seminar college course do what programs that are out there in the nonprofit space are trying to do every day for students like this that are coming over. So anyways, I thought that was really interesting. And I also think the element of time, which is the dimension of when, I think that's dimension 4. That was also interesting to me because I wonder, is it too late for students to learn? Like, is it too late for students to leverage the kind of learning experience that I'd like to see them have in this first year, this redesigned first year experience? What can be expected to actually change at this point in their formal education process when they've just gone through K through 12 system? This was my whole rant, my inside internal rant about like how education is just structured like incompatibly with human development, particularly adolescent development. And so by the time these students get to community college and they're coming in not optimizing their learning because we're not understanding what they need the right ways, can one course really make a difference? I guess, to be a little existential. I don't know. So anyways,
I love that. No, I mean, and first of all, yes, I think it can. And hearing you talk about it, I realized we need to talk more about, I've always talked about educator PD, but the basis of the reason I'm educating the educators is because of the nonprofit program I'm working with for curriculum development for the students, which are the students you're talking about. They're Title I students. They
yes,
have So yeah, anyway, well, I thought that was great, and we'll have to keep talking about it next time. But
All right.
I think that wraps us up for today.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.